Hello, this is a part 4 on the meaning of 3080 vibration. Originally, it was a 3-part series. Some questions have been brought to my attention, and I've decided to expand on the information to make these additional points clear. So what I want to make clear is the relationship of vibrations that are octaves of each other, the relationship of those vibrations to each other. So if you take a vibration, let's take any number, I'll take a fairly small number, 7. If I multiply by 2, I double it, it's called going up an octave. I multiply by 2 again, we go up another octave. So we can take any number and repeatedly double it and go up octaves. So in the case of the songwriters, we have this 385 vibration that's important, also doubling it again, as multiplied by 4, and multiplying by 8. So we can double it 1, 2, 3 times. And those charts showed up as being important. All 4 of those showed up being important in the songwriters because those vibrations are related to each other. And I want to show you the way that charts that are in octaves of each other are related, and some variations that are not obvious. There's some things that can happen when you double the vibration that are not obvious, and I wanted to make that clear. And then there's some questions that I got about why are we jumping all the way to 3080? I want to talk about that as well. So, but first, let's understand the different things that can happen when you double a vibration. I'm going to start this off as a question to see if you know the answer to this basic question, and then we're going to see some little variations that can happen. Let's say you have a T-square in a vibration. I'll just pick the number 7 as a nice small number to keep it simple. You have a T-square in the 7 vibration chart. T-square means 2 planets are opposite each other, a third planet is square. What happens to that T-square when I double the vibration to 14? And then what happens when I go to 28? Okay. And then I'm going to talk about some variations that can happen. So if you want to think about that a little bit, you could pause the video, but I'm going to go ahead and continue. So here is the answer. What happens is that T-square, I'm showing it in this chart wheel on the left side, and instead of having 3 planets, I made a sun-moon conjunction on the left side. So I've actually got 4 planets in a T-square. What happens in a T-square when I double the vibration, go from, say, 7 to 14? Every aspect goes down an octave. So when the vibration goes up an octave, the aspects go down an octave. The sun and moon are still conjunct because you can't go lower than conjunction. They remain conjunct. Remember all the orbs, that orb, well, let me just say it this way. That orb of the conjunction, the sun and moon are still conjunct, but everything gets doubled when I double the vibration, so the orb becomes twice as big. If sun and moon are separated by 3 degrees, they're going to be separated by 6 degrees in the 14 vibe. They're still conjunct. So the opposition turns into a conjunction. It goes from 2 vibe to 1 vibe. So it moves over to be with the sun and moon. And Jupiter goes from being 4 vibe down an octave to opposition. When I go up another octave, that Jupiter goes from 2 to 1, and they're all conjunct. So in 28 vibe, they're all conjunct. But notice that that sun and moon now has an orb that's 4 times bigger than it was in the birth chart. So once you get to a conjunction, it has nowhere to go, so to speak. They remain conjunct, and the orb just becomes bigger. Okay, so that's what happens when you go up octaves. And if it stays in orb, like if the sun and moon are close enough that they stay in orb when I go up 2 octaves to 28, obviously it's a stronger configuration. It's holding together as we go up octaves. It's staying together. So either some things go out of orb or they stay in orb. If they stay in orb, it stays strong through those octaves. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out because in the case of the songwriters, there's 2 points I want to make. It's not just 2 octaves, it's 3 octaves that we're talking about, where the planets are not going out of orb. They're holding together over 3 octaves. So here's what it looks like in the case of the songwriters. We have aspects for 2 of the 3 songwriters. I'm going to show you the details of each one. But for 2 of them, there are 3 songwriters that we looked at. It didn't start with a T square. It started with 8 vibration aspects, like eighths, like a semi-squares and squares. It started with 8 vibration. When you double that vibration, those eighths turns into fourths. It turns into something like similar to like a T square, for example. Then it'll turn into the oppositions. Then it will turn into conjunctions. This is what's happening with the songwriters. There's this kind of configuration here, and it goes up to here. One of the 3 songwriters actually doesn't start with eighths, it starts with fourths. So all these situations are extremely similar. And one of the things that's interesting is how many octaves are you going up? What octave are you starting with? And does it stay in orb? These are some of the variations that can happen. For example, you could have Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Saturn all conjunct in 56 vibe, and they are not in aspect in 28 vibe. They could just be 56ths. It could be like a 156 that are, a 356. Well, 3, that might, no, I don't think that can simplify. Things that are only 56, like a 156 or a 556, they could be in those aspects, or they could actually be 28ths. Like Jupiter is in 28 vibe, and if that Jupiter to 28 vibe to Sun, Moon, Saturn, if the orb is small enough, it'll stay within orb when you get to 56. So you see the variations. When you look at 56 vibe, number one, you don't know if some of those aspects are lower vibes. They might be, they may not be. You do not know. The vibrational chart is not like this perfect thing that tells you everything. It just says, okay, they're together in 56. We do not know if they may be together in 28 or 14 or all the way down to 7. We don't know. And similarly, let's go to the opposite extreme. If we're looking at 7 vibe, we do not know. I mean, you can calculate it in your head, but just looking at it, it's not always obvious whether that's going to stay in orb when I go up to 56. They will be conjunct, but they may be really not conjunct. They may have spread way out of orb. Okay, so I hope you can see those variations of things that can happen. If not, just listen to this video again and think about it, and it's really quite simple. There's variations. The simplest, strongest, most powerful thing that can happen when you see something like this in 7 vibe is it stays together all the way through. Now, if the configuration is only in 56 vibe, it means it's only operating at that high vibration. It's not grounded in lower vibrations. If the vibration is 7 and it goes out of orb in higher vibrations, it means it's grounded in the lower vibrations and doesn't pick up these very internal vibrations that tell us how we think and feel. The lower vibrations are more about external expression. So you can have something like this that goes out of orb, so it's really right there in the person's behavior, doesn't give all of the extreme talents and extreme tendencies that happen when you're in the high vibration. So the strongest configuration starts out low, continues all the way up because it's saturated all the way through from the way the person thinks and feels to their ability to express it. It stays within orb. So there are all these variations. What's happening I'm going to show you, I'm going to go over the 3 songwriters, but to give you a preview, what's happening is that 2 of the 3 songwriters are in this situation and it stays within orb all the way up. Very, very powerful. Instead of 7, it's 385. 385. 385 times 2, 385 times 4, 385 times 8. It stays all the way through. This is one of the reasons why this is so powerful. We're not just talking about one of them. It stays continuous. Very clear, solid configurations. Now, one of the songwriters starts here. It doesn't start at 385, it starts at 385 times 2 and goes up to, that's Bob Dylan. But Bob Dylan, instead of having 4 planets, he has more than 4 planets. So he only goes up 2 octaves, but he has more planets involved. So anybody with any kind of sequence like this, like a 385 and a 385 times 2, is going to be very similar to the higher octaves. Any of these sequences are going to create this effect. The higher ones, they're a little bit different than the lower ones, and it depends on what planets. Everybody's unique. But that's what's going on. So let's look at it. I want to show you how these configurations change for each person. Let's start with Paul Simon. I want to start with him because in my previous research on 55 vibe, he is the one who was the problem. He did not fit my model that I had earlier. And this research is trying to figure out what's going on with Paul Simon. It ends up that there's another vibration that's important besides 55, and that's 55 times 7, which is 385. If you've watched the first 3 videos, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't watch the first 3, you may have a little bit of trouble following that, but you can still follow along pretty well. Let me show you Paul Simon's 385 vibe. Now what I've done is I've removed all the planets except for the 4 that I'm interested in. Notice that I'm in 385 vibe. It tells me right here, 385th harmonic chart. And what I have is a semi-square of Venus to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, a square of Saturn-Neptune to Pluto, and a sesquiquadrat. Now the lines are thick, sesquiquadrat from Pluto to Venus. They're connected in 8 vibe. And the lines are thick, showing that the orbs are small. What's going to happen is it's going to be just like what I just showed you here. They're in 8 vibe. It's going to turn into a T-square, into an opposition, into a conjunction. And if this is very powerful, extremely powerful, it'll stay with an orb all the way through. Let's see what happens. Let's get back to the software. Now I'm going to double 385 and go to 770. That means it should turn into something like a T-square or a grand cross, into 4 vibration aspects. And there it is. It turns into a T-square, and the lines are still thick. They don't have to remain thick. Things could start going out of orb with no line at all. So this is the strong condition. Let's double it again. This is unusual for things to stay with an orb over many octaves, but let's see. I'm going to go to 1540. Looks promising. The lines are thick. I go to 1540, and there it is. The T-square turns into an opposition. Notice if I go back to 770, it's Venus that's square the other 2. Venus is going to move over to be opposition. Pluto's going to join Saturn and Neptune. Exactly what I showed you in those other illustrations. So this is 1540 is now 385 times 4, and there's the Venus opposition the other 3. The lines look pretty thick. Maybe it's going to hold all the way up to 3080. When I get to 3080, there are the 4 planets spreading only 10 degrees. Oh my God. So it's more than just, they're in 3080 vibration. It's going from 385 all the way up to 3080, rock solid. That's really amazing. This, just to have 4 planets in any vibration is amazing, but to continue for that far is really amazing. Okay, now let's look at, that's Paul Simon. Let's look at Carole King and see what's going on with her. Now her configuration, going back to my PowerPoint, is instead of Venus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto that Paul Simon has, it's Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. This is amazing. Only 1 planet changes from Venus to Mars in the same exact vibration. It looks eerily similar. Paul Simon and Carole King have extraordinarily similar configurations. Let's go back to the PowerPoint, and now I'm going to right-click and customize this wheel, and instead of Venus, I want to put Mars. I've taken out all the other planets so that we can see exactly what's going on here. Let me see. This is Carole King's natal chart. Let's go to her 385 vibe. There it is. Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. It looks so extremely similar to Paul Simon's chart. I mean, just unbelievably similar. A semi-square, a square, and a sesquiquadrat. Same aspects. 3 of the 4 planets are the same. Now, let's see how tight this is. It looks tight. The lines look pretty thick, but sometimes they'll go out of orb, even though the lines look thick. So let's look at it. I'm going to double it to 770. That means Mars is going to move into a T-square. It's in eighths. It'll move into fourths. Saturn will, let's just do it and see what happens. I'm going to go to 770. And what... it's Saturn. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They've all gone down an octave, and there's the T-square. We've gone from 8 vibration to 4 vibration. Now we're going to go up another octave. That'll bring us to 1540, and Mars is going to join Neptune and Pluto. Saturn's going to move over to be opposition. Will it still be an orb? Yes. And they look thick, and when I go all the way up to 3080, they're still within orb with a 10-degree orb. Same orb that Carole King had. I think it's a little bit of a coincidence, but the configurations are extraordinarily similar. And to keep it simple in the first 3 videos, I just emphasized 3080, 3080, 3080. But what I'm showing you here is there's even more to this. You could think of it as hard aspects in 385. But not all hard aspects in 385 are going to stay with an orb when you get to 3080. So as a simple way of describing what's going on, all 3 musicians, the other one is Bob Dylan, I'll show you him in a second. His is a little more different from Carole King and Paul Simon. Very similar idea, but not quite as identical as theirs are. So let's look at Bob Dylan. His 385 vibe, and let me go back to my PowerPoint and see what planets are involved. For Bob Dylan, it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. So I'm going to go into the software, and I'm just going to select those so we're not distracted by other planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. So now I've selected only those planets, and wow, his 385 vibe is amazing. All those planets are in a huge grand cross. But notice some of them have thinner lines. The ones to Venus. Venus may drop out as we go up octaves. These look like they're a good chance they're going to stay within orb. So let's see what happens when I go to 770. I double this. I've got 3 planets, opposition 3 planets. I'm wrong, Venus is still there. It looks like Venus, they're all making aspects to each other. So actually, one of these I think has gone out of orb. Yeah. Let me see. I think they stayed within orb. Let's go to 1540. Yeah, they stay within orb. All those lines are there. I double it again. And now, let's see, 770. Yeah, they're opposition. They're all going to turn into conjunction. At 1540, they all become conjunct. So you see Bob Dylan's ends at 1540 because it starts with 4 vibe instead of 8 vibe in 385, and they all come together 2 octaves higher in 1540. Now this is spreading 13 degrees. It's unbelievable. 6 planets in 1540 vibe, and they're aspected to each other all the way back in 385. So it's a very solid, consistent configuration going from 385 to 770 to 1540, and all of it staying within orb. Now when I go up to 3080, that's when Venus drops out. Venus is now not in orb to 3 other planets. It's an orb to 1 or 2 planets, but not to 3. It's not part of a 4-planet configuration. But Saturn to Jupiter is 15 degrees. The other 5 are within orb. So these are the things that are happening. Extremely similar. If somebody has 4 or more planets connected in any of this sequence, it's not, it's not night and day. It's not like you have no ability to write songs if it goes, if it starts at 385 versus starts at 770 or ends at 1540. All of these octaves are very, very similar in their effect. The higher one's more internal. You need those really high vibrations to get the genius. And I think the ability to bring it and ground it and execute it and actually write the songs helps to come all the way down to the aspects are there in orb in 385. They're not just higher vibration aspects. So I wanted to show you that more clearly what's going on, because questions have come up like, do you really have to go to 3080? Maybe 1540 is enough. You don't have to. For somebody to have this musical talent, this is just the way it is for these people. And the simple way for me to just summarize what happened is all 3 of them have these planets conjunct in 38. They all have 4 or more planets conjunct in 3085. Yet they all have it grounded also as aspects in 385. They're not just only 3085. Okay, so I wanted to show you the variations of what can happen with octaves. And basically you can look at this as hard aspects in 385 that are strong enough to remain in orb when you go higher. That's actually what's more accurately what's happening. Let me say that again. What's happening with these 3 songwriters is when you look at their 385 vibe, you're seeing hard aspects. There's Bob Dylan's. Let me just show you one other. Here's Carole King's. I'd have to switch to her planets. I already showed it to you. So you got the idea that you've got those hard aspects in 385. Okay, so let's go over these last few points that I want to make, which is the second question that was asked, which is, why am I jumping over to 3085? Does anybody know? Can you think of the answer? Why did I make these videos about 3085? Why are we going all the way up there? Why are we even looking at this? Because what was my research question? My research question is, why is Paul Simon a prolific songwriter when he does not have a planetary configuration in 55 vibe? Because the previous research found that songwriters have configurations in 55. Paul Simon was I think he was the only songwriter who does not have a strong planetary configuration. I didn't have that many charts of songwriters, but of the ones I did, he was the only one who didn't. He didn't fit the model. So when you create a model, it doesn't work perfectly. It works pretty well, but he was an exception to the rule. It's bothered me for years. I did that research years ago. It's been on my mind, like, what's going on? I've looked at different things, and then I woke up one morning and I thought, what if I throw a 7 in there? 5 times 7 times 11. Bam, everything came together, as I just showed you. And also, I want to mention this. It was not just that research on the greatest rock and roll musicians. I applied that idea to other songwriters when I got their birth information, which I didn't, they were not part of the original study, but I noticed that I had the birth information for all 4 members of the Bee Gees. And those guys wrote tons of songs. What did I see in the Bee Gees and in their synastry? 55 vibe. It gives you chills at this. You apply what you learn from the research, and it works so beautifully. And I made a tutorial video about that. Richard and Karen Carpenter, especially Richard Carpenter, he wrote all these songs. What does he have in his chart? 55 vibe. I made a tutorial video about that. And synastry with Karen, so they connected together. In performing those songs. I did a rectification of Paul McCartney's chart because we do not have AA data for him. And what did I look for? 55 vibration. So this idea of 55 vibration and songwriting is something that we have good confidence in. It showed up in the research. We applied it to new people. Seems to be getting confirmed over and over again. And there's Paul Simon by himself, not fitting the model. So you see, I've just been, what's going on with Paul Simon? There must be something. Throw in the number 7, 5 times 11 times 7. Boom, it makes sense. And even the people that have the 55 also have the 385 and higher octaves of 385. So this gives you more appreciation of what's going on, why we looked at this. Depends on what your research question is. If my research question is, how can I better understand vibrational astrology? Yes, it would make sense to fill in all of those prime numbers and work my way up, but that was not my question. My question is, why does this person not fit the model? And that's one of the ways we make progress, is by focusing on people who do not work and figure out what's going on. Because the model is true, it's just not complete and it misses things. And it's still incomplete. We'll learn more as we continue to research, but it gets better and better and better. We're able to fit people more and more accurately. Also, I was curious about exactly how these people are rated as songwriters, and I wanted to see if there were other top songwriters with AA data. So Rolling Stone magazine is well known for listing the exceptional people in music. They're dedicated to it. It's a good source. So I Googled Rolling Stone's top songwriters. I found they do have a list of it. Here's the website. I don't have that up, but anyway, you can go to the website. You'll see the list, rollingstone.com/interactive/lists-100-greatest-songwriters, or just Google it and you'll find it. And Bob Dylan is the #1 songwriter of all time. The guy with 6 planets in 385 times 4 vibration and 5 planets in 385 times 8 vibration. This incredibly strong pattern. Carole King, who often writes her songs with a fellow Jerry Goffin, she's #7, Paul Simon's #8, and these are the only 3 songwriters in their top 10 that have AA data. Chuck Berry is on there, Stevie Wonder's on there, they do not have AA data. I looked at their charts. There's a time within 15 minutes of when they were born where there are 4 planets conjunct in 3085. And they appear in lower vibrations as well. So, maybe they were born at those times. I looked at Joni Mitchell. The Astro Databank gives 2 different ideas of when she's born. If you look at the other idea, where she says she was born with the Scorpio rising, then she says Sagittarius later, I can make a tutorial video about that. It's very interesting. That fits much better. So, based on this model, Joni Mitchell was born at that time that gives her Scorpio rising, and I have a reason for why somebody said it was Sagittarius. It was a miscalculation that was common at the time Joni was saying that. Anyway, my main point is that, I went and looked to see what other big songwriters we have with AA data. There weren't any other up near the top. I could keep going down the list, but that's as far as I've gotten so far. And the ones that don't have AA data, it looks like they could very well possibly have this configuration as well. Okay, so anyway, it was interesting that they do show up. I mean, to be in the top 10 of thousands and thousands of songwriters is amazing. So, and they have this configuration. Another reason I'm mentioning this is you could have a very good songwriter and there'll be other things going on. So probably other songwriters have only 4 planets in overtones of 55. I don't think the 385 is necessary to be a songwriter. It's one of the possible things. Just 55 by itself. You don't have to be Bob Dylan or Carole King or Paul Simon. There's only 10 of them out of many thousands, at the top 10. So there's going to be a lot of variations. Also, things like supporting midpoint structures in those configurations are important. You also have to think about different styles of music. This is a particular style of modern soft rock, I guess you could call it. and with different styles of music and different situations and different training and different experiences, that's going to give variation as well. But we are making incredible progress. We have models that actually fit real data. This almost never happens in astrology. Astrologers will tell you, oh, people with music have moon and Pisces, blah, blah, blah. I pull this up in the databases. They don't have that. It's just not true. Do they bother to look? No. But here we're creating models that actually fit. We get new data. We test it, as I did when I got data for the Bee Gees and the Carpenters and other people, and I apply it and it works. There's still some curiosities, like the musician Prince. He, from what I've looked at so far, he doesn't seem to have the 55 or the 385. So there's still exceptions where the model gets better and better and better. It's like the accuracy, can go from like 50% to 70% to 80% to 90%. And so it's getting better and better and better, while the rest of astrology just is based just on personal experience and what was passed down by previous astrologers without even verifying it. So this is a whole new world of a real modern evidence-based astrology that works, in complete agreement with modern academic standards and common sense. If you think something's true, why not look and verify it? Okay, so anyway, that's a fourth video. I wanted to make those points clear, just to give you a richer understanding of what's going on. I can only present so much information in each half hour, so there were additional things I didn't mention, and then sure enough, people asked questions related to those things I didn't mention, so there it is, just to make that a little more comprehensive. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. If you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, if you could just subscribe, that would help tremendously. And the members, those of you paying $10 a month for the live meetings and the index into videos, etc. Wow, thanks to all of you. God bless. Namaste.